Welcome back to Success is Weird and Messy. I am your host, Kathleen Gabriel. Each week, I talk with business owners and how they've navigated all the challenges and changes that come with being in business. Today, I am joined by Andrea Steinbrenner, the CEO of Exit Consulting Group. Exit Consulting Group develops roadmaps for businesses either going through or anticipating a transition, helping with everything from generational succession to exit strategies, partner disputes, value adding strategies, even selling the business, and even more. So, Andrea, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here today.
Absolutely. Well, to kick us off, I gave kind of the broadest overview about what Exit does. I'd love to hear more about the business.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the warm introduction. So, much to what you were saying, Kathleen, our company really focuses on helping businesses and business owners, particularly through the transition of what's going on in their business, which is a little bit different than the normal market approach because most people focus on the transaction. And what we have found is that the transaction is part of the transition, but it's not really the main focus. The main focus really is everything that goes in leading up to that point in time, that pivot point of a transaction, and then what happens after it. And there's lots of statistics that have been gathered over the last 50 years or so that show many business owners, the majority of business owners, up to 95% of privately held business owners have regret about their transition and transaction, mostly because they weren't doing the prep work or the post work leading up to that pivotal point. And the reason why we take the approach that we do is because myself, my two partners, one being the founder, have gone through transactions in our career and have felt that regret and wanted to solve for it. And so we just took a different approach of how do we get in front of that? And then what do we do once it happens? And what we found is, though we don't like to talk about it as business owners, and dare I say it gets messy, it's all about your heart, and you have to do the hard work as a leader. You have to do the hard work as a business owner. You have to do the hard work as an employee or a leader of employees to be successful in that whole process. And so that's where we start.
That's fantastic. And I think it's one of those things, just like with anything where you're looking forward, the goal of a business isn't just what you're trying to sell and how much money you're trying to make and what's right in front of you. It really does become, well, then what?
Well, then what? Yeah, and for us, that then what really translates into a triangular conversation we have where even if you're in the day to day selling the widget, making the money, liquidity isn't what motivates people, at least not long term. Might short term, right? You can accomplish some goals with it. But really, what we have found that the trifecta is yes, you have to have liquidity because otherwise, one of a lot of your basic needs aren't met, and you're living in a scarcity mindset, which is hard for people to operate from successfully. Two, though, it's really about legacy, and three, relevancy. And those two pivot points tend to be a lot more motivating for doing the work and getting it right than not doing the work and wishing you had down the road. And so the regret normally isn't because of a lack of liquidity or a tax implication. That's all part of what happens. But it's really more about I didn't really plan correctly, and the company's not left the way I wanted it to, or the employees don't have what I thought they would, or I didn't dig in here and realize that was what that meant in my deal. Furthermore, I've been defined by this thing called my business for name the number of years. And being that business owner or that leader in that business isn't just defining me at work. It defines me at home. It defines me at the dinner table. It defines me when I go out to eat with friends and family. It defines in how I give and donate to the community. It defines in my whole identity. So if I don't work on how I'm going to be relevant post being the owner of this business, I'm probably going to be pretty dissatisfied, and that road's going to be pretty tough for a while post the transition and transaction. So we do a lot of work with clients up front, and as long as it takes before we ever go to a go-to-market strategy, if that's their end goal, because we know that it's really about the heart. And what I mean by if that's their end goal, sometimes people are transitioning to families, sometimes they're gifting, sometimes it's going in their estate. It's not always a third party or go-to-market sale.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I think that's one of the things that business owners, when you're right in the middle of it and you're just trying to have a business, you're not necessarily thinking about, well, what do I want at the end of all of this, because the other option is, I guess I just close the business. And that seems deeply unsatisfying.
It's deeply, well, it can and can't be. So I will say most of the time yes, but there is a little caveat, and we do talk about it because it's important. Liquidating your company isn't necessarily negative. If you're a lifestyle company, you've been able to run your whole life through it, support your family, take your kids on vacation, put them through college, whatever it might be, and you just happen to have a widget or a product that somebody doesn't want to buy, or it's so ingrained around you. So I don't want to name certain businesses because that pigeonholes them that they're not saleable, and they are. But there are certain businesses out there, or the way certain business owners have structured their company, and it can be any widget, by the way, where it's so on their back and they like it that way that they're not actually going to do the work to transition how the company operates. And so liquidating and creating a liquidity event that way at the end of their career, or that portion of their career, can be very positive, right? It can actually lay the foundation, for people to go do whatever it is they want to do next. Most of the time, liquidation has a negative connotation because of it's coming at a time of crisis, right? A pain point, and or you see all those flashy street signs that are bright orange and bright yellow that are basically race to the bottom, right? And pennies for the dollar. And so it's a stigma around it. And it doesn't come from nowhere, but it's not always that way.
I mean, I think the difference you're talking about there is intention.
Your goals. Yeah.
Yeah, your goals and your actual desires in that of, I've prepared for this liquidation event and now it looks the way I want it to, versus the only option I have is a fire sale.
Yeah. And so the other extreme on that we talk about is what we call the Viking funeral, which is some people say, I want to die at my desk. And I want to go to work every day until I'm not on this earth anymore. And I want the corner office. And I don't care if I'm reading the Wall Street Journal and playing solitaire. That's where I want to go. And we say, great. Knowing that allows everybody to plan around you. There's nothing negative about that either. But knowing your intention, being clear about your intention, helps everybody else go, because you're going to operate the business different at 50, at 70, at 90. And so making sure people know what your intentions are in the plan and having the ability to turn things over when it's necessary is part of the process. So there's lots of options. There's so many different paths you can take. And our job is to say, what is your goal? How are we going to get there? And what work do we need to do to make sure you're going to click off that relevancy and legacy box when we get there, as well as the liquidity?
Oh, absolutely. And I think also just this level and quality of planning allows people to pivot in ways, because you may think you have a goal. You may think that, oh, my ultimate goal is to die at my desk. And then you take a nice long vacation and say, you know what though? Maybe I do want to golf 6 months out of the
Maybe I
year.
don't want to check my email every other day when I'm off, right? So,
Right.
no, it's really true. It's really true. And it's interesting. So, before we got on, Kathleen and I were talking, but part of the story of Exit Consulting Group is our founder, John. He started this firm about 20 years ago. And he started as an Arthur Andersen CPA, and then he opened up a construction company with his cousin, and they ran it successfully for 15 years or so. And in his 40s, John was getting that entrepreneurial itch that many of you know, and said, I want to go do something different. What? I don't know. And so he transacted the company within his family. And for lots of different reasons, about a year or so later, the company wasn't doing well, and John's seller carry note wasn't worth anything, and he wasn't going to get paid out on the transaction of his company. And that was very real. He was a husband. He had 2 young boys. That seller carry was still part of the family income at that point in time. And he realized then that he really didn't understand his deal. And he really didn't understand how it was put together. And he went back and he started leafing through it and reading through it and understanding it and saying, wow, I had really smart service providers around me. They all were doing a good job. But what I realized on this side of the table is no one was talking to me as the business owner. And we were making assumptions because I'm an accountant, because I'm an entrepreneur, because I'm well equipped in business acumen. I understood what was going on. And because of my ego as an entrepreneur, I didn't tell them I didn't. And I didn't even realize I didn't. And so now that I'm stuck with a piece of paper that's not worth anything, I'm realizing the error of all of our ways. And I don't want that to happen out in the marketplace. So that's why we started as a company almost 20 years ago. When I met John in 2019, I thought his widget was great. I thought his brand was great. And I actually came in as a consultant to help him scale the company because my background's in accounting as well, but also operations and growth and scale. And I said, John, you have this amazing thing, but this little tiny boutique company in Coronado, California, which is this little bitty corner in south corner of the country, and said, you have this thing that the market needs, so let's scale it out. And so as we started working together, one day I kind of tilted my head at him. I said, John, you got a really great thing here, but we don't have a succession plan in the firm. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of a problem. Cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? So we kept working. I was consulting, and he called me up one day and said, I know my exit plan. And I said, great, let's go do it. What is it? And he said, it's you. And I said, oh no, time to get messier, right? So I jumped in. It was a great opportunity. I jumped in, and we've really been not just servicing the market as exit engineers now, but living as people going through it as well. And we share our story. We share it all. And my favorite line to say to everybody, because it was real in our firm, is who gets the credit card points?
Yeah.
Because it's a real it will break a deal. We have seen it break a deal. And so we try to get all that stuff on the table ahead of time because it matters. These are things people work hard for. They put a lot of value in it. And it's an easy analogy, but everybody who's listening can say, yeah, if someone wants to take my AMX points or my Southwest points or my American points or my Delta points or my Marriott points or my whatever that I put my whole family vacation on, we're going to have a conversation.
And there's so many different elements like that that you
So
can't
many.
know until you talk to the person.
That's right. And they matter different no matter who you're
Yeah.
talking to. So you have to dig into all of it.
No, that's really what it comes down to when you're talking to people at all, and especially when you're talking to workforces and why people work where they work and what they do. And that even goes to, and we tend to forget it, but that goes to the people in charge.
Absolutely.
Why are you there, and what makes it worthwhile to you, and what makes it fulfilling to you? And part of that is, am I going to be mad that I don't have credit card points?
Absolutely. Yeah, or whatever the thing might be. So
Yeah.
though we didn't mean to do this and create our own story within our story, it's worked out really well. And, we came into it with a lot of empathy, obviously, but we have so much more as fellow business owners working through our own transition. And so that's been a very poignant, amazing opportunity for us to offer.
And speaking of that amazing opportunity, you walked into that being told, I've figured out the answer. And the answer is that you're going to take on this thing that I haven't discussed with you yet.
When you put
How
it
was
like
that for
that.
you? And I am sure that the two of you had this long-standing business relationship where he knew that this was a reasonable conversation to have. But also, like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I had just come from a 10-year career at an outsourced accounting firm, working in that as an accountant for many years and then moving into the VP of Ops role. And so up to that point in my career, I was an employee my whole career. So this was a new, and then I ventured out and I started my own consulting firm. But outside of that, I was high up on the food chain a lot of the time, but still wasn't my company. And so when John said, "Come in and be my partner," that was really interesting to me for a lot of reasons. One, someone believing in you and wanting you to be their partner is very humbling and flattering and exciting, right? It's scary too because you're taking on their identity, their brand, their secret sauce, and they're asking you to take it and not just help them grow it and do something with it, but be their legacy. And John and I talked a lot about that. That was a big deal for him. And so that's a big win for me when all this is said and done is did we click that box for him? Because for someone to hand you their baby and say, here, it's yours now to take care of, go do a good job. You want to do a good job,
You do.
So that was a pretty amazing opportunity for me. And the story goes, so I came in as COO in 2020, and our plan was always that I would move into CEO 24, 25 timeframe, about now. And John sat me down in 22 and said, we're growing. This is fun. I'm having fun. And I said, yeah, me too. And he said, I don't know how to be the CEO of a professional service firm. I know how to be the CEO of my life. I know how to be the CEO of a construction company. I know how to be the CEO of a solopreneur boutique company that everything operates around me, but that's not what you're building and growing, and that's not what we want. I said, you're right. What are we going to
That's
do?
fine. Yeah.
And he said, what do you mean, what are we going to do? I'm like, who's going to be the CEO? Because I didn't identify as a CEO. I was like, I'm a CFO, I'm a
Mhm.
COO, right? And he was like, oh, Andrea, right?
Right.
So we made the change, and we had brought in a third partner at the time, Scott Sporer, who is amazing. Also, we're all accounting geeks, finance backgrounds, and so the three of us really mesh well together. And we made the change in 22, and it's been a wild, fun, exciting, bumpy ride. But we're doing it together, and it's pretty fun because we all know our spot, but we're all very supportive and collaborative. And because I think we have the benefit of, we see so many businesses that don't have that perspective, and so many ways in which to do things that we're very aware of, not wanting to repeat some of the things that we see, but also being the example that it can be done well, and it can be done smooth. And smooth is still messy and bumpy, by the way.
Yeah. Oh no, it's still full of human people.
Yeah.
And and so that comes with its own sort of chaos, regardless of anything.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we start with a lot of times when we engage with clients in general is it's going to be messy. It's going to be uncomfortable. Like that, the only way you get through it, you can't get to the other side of the swamp without going through the messy middle. It's just part of it, and we'll throw you rowboats and tubes and life jackets, but you still got to get dirty, and you still got to get through it. And there's still things in the mud and the water that might come up and get you, and you got to be careful. So because it got us, and we even knew, we thought we were above reproach 4 years ago. Oh, we thought we had this, we were good, we were exit engineers, we were going. And there was a couple times John Scott and I sat across the table from each other to crosshairs going, well, looks like we are our client, like we know there's a path through, but we got to get dirty, right? And so that's just life, right? Everything that is worth it, you get dirty. So
Yeah. Well, and also I think it is really admirable that John had that emotional intelligence and introspection to say, "Oh, I'm actually not the person to do this." And to identify in you even before you had,
yeah.
to say, "Hey, you know who has these skills that I don't necessarily, and who is prepared to do this the way I am not necessarily?" That I think is one of the key parts to being successful in any of these endeavors,
Yeah, for
is being
sure.
able to say, "Hey, I've reached the point where I'm at the end of my knowledge and or skills. Let's bring in some experts to advise, to plan."
And he's taught me how to do that in the role I was in before and this role, by him being so humble and open and saying, I don't want to be the CEO that can't let go. I don't want to be the business owner that has to control. Over years has allowed me to let my walls down and go, I don't know how to do that thing. And we do need to get help, or that's not my skill set. And you know what? It doesn't need to be. Somebody else can do it better. Someone else likes doing it. Like, we can actually divide and conquer. So he definitely leads through example. And Scott and I give him kudos all the time for just how incredible he is in doing that and being transparent and talking about it. He shares it with our clients, he shares it with our team. Our team is in full awareness of what's going on. And so it's pretty cool all around.
I don't know, I think that's the dream, isn't it? Working with people you can actually communicate with.
That's the win.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you can show up to work and you know that there aren't any landmines anywhere. It's just we're all kind of trying to row in the same direction even when we have different opinions.
Yeah. And if there is a landmine, they're going to jump on the grenade first, which is pretty amazing.
So you've been with Exit for a while now, just in various capacities. What's changed over the years?
A lot.
I mean, obviously your leadership team.
Yes, our team has changed, and so we've had incredible people work in the firm throughout the years, throughout all of John's tenure, and then on, and John's still here. He's not fully out yet. So I'm a big believer, and I've seen it time and time again in the businesses I've been in, and in many hundreds of clients I've worked with. What got you here won't get you there, and so having the foresight, having the knowledge, having the understanding that not everybody who builds it wants to stay in it. Not everybody who likes that mid tier wants to go to the next level. And having the guts to call it out is difficult, but really important. And so, our team has changed a couple times because building a growing professional service firm requires different skill sets at different sizes. And so just being honest with ourselves about that is part of it. The tools we've used, we've evolved in technology and the tools that we use time and time again. The way we define our products and our processes and have tightened them up, right? So it's been interesting for sure. But yeah, we've definitely evolved from a solopreneurship in a small office with a couple people to a thriving business, to a thriving consulting and M&A firm with a team. And we have clients all over the nation, and we're making a brand out there, and it's really exciting. And it's great to see the team get pumped up and be out there executing.
What is the difference in your mindset having come in as a consultant to scale? What's the difference between that and scaling as the CEO?
Having the vision. So when you come in as a consultant, you're told what they want to happen. You can kind of pick at it a little bit and give your insight, but your job is to execute to the plan and help them execute to the plan. Sometimes help them develop the plan, but it's not your vision for the company. It's the business owner's vision for the company that you're helping put some muscle on the bone, right? Then all of a sudden everyone looks to you and goes, "What's the vision?"
Yep.
And you're like, "Oh, right. Okay." So one, it's getting clear on what that is and getting honest with yourself. Then it's having the guts to communicate it and be okay with what people think about it. Because I think that's one place we get stuck as CEOs and business owners is we know in our head what it is, and we'll go out and just start doing it, even though not everybody knows what we're doing or why we're doing it. And it has more to do with not because they wouldn't follow us, because we're scared to tell them how big and crazy and bold our ideas are. And so instead we just bleed it out a little bit. And then we start making these big moves, and they're like, "Why are we doing this big move when you just gave me this little nugget?" And so I
Yeah.
got lots of feedback around the lack of clarity of what was going on. And I said, "Oh, okay, I should probably get really clear on what does it mean to be the visionary? What does it mean to communicate as a visionary? And then what does it mean to follow up?" And that did not happen overnight. And I realized maybe 2 years in, 18 months in or so, I needed some help. And I needed help outside of my company. I needed help outside of my current network because I really needed some objectivity and subjectivity to come in and give me that honest feedback that when you're close with somebody, even if they're being honest, you hear it different. So I got myself in some different CEO groups and some coaching, and I continue on it now. And now I actually, when I work with clients, I require them to join a CEO group and get a coach outside of that CEO group because it's a lot of work and you need a lot of support. And it's typically the last place in the company people apply support, but it's actually the most critical to have it. And I just learned from my own lifetime so far as a CEO, which is very short. But I can see the different perspective, and I can see how the firm has shifted and grown, and the culture, just how I show up different. And so that's really important. And it's really important for my team. It's important for my clients. It's important for people listening to know, like, I put my pants on the same way everybody else does, which means I got to do the same work.
No, I've said for years and years, from a human resources perspective, that every job, every person in any job needs to know why they're doing it.
Totally.
And it's very easy to feel like, ugh, this is useless. I just sit here and I do a thing that no one cares about. And that's only true if you don't know how that fits in with the overarching vision of the company. So you're absolutely right. That huge importance of communicating everywhere.
It's huge. And I think the reason why I can relate to it so well and assimilate to it is because I have felt that throughout my career, right? Many business owners and entrepreneurs, that's all they know is how to be the business owner and the entrepreneur. So when employees give them feedback, it's not that they're trying to not understand them, but they don't understand them. So I used to give this analogy at my old firm because it would happen all the time. We'd have Monday morning meetings. They were great. We had 100 plus employees. the leadership team would get up and give whatever message and activity we were doing that week, and everybody would leave motivated and stoked. And the kitchen was right by the training room, so the staff would go out and they'd make their coffee. And for instance, let's say the leadership team got and said, we're going to launch the initiative purple, and everyone's like, yeah, purple. Whole rooms cheering for purple, right? Employees go out to the water cooler and the coffee machine, and they start excitedly talking about red. And they're so excited about red, and they can't wait for red. And the leadership team goes to the conference room for their meeting, and they start talking about blue. And they're so excited, and they start talking because they're using their own filter to interpret purple. So they think they're talking purple, but they're not. They're talking red and blue. So they're close, and they're close enough that they share a few words that they think they're on the same level, but they're not. And so you end up having this disjointed thing happening in business all the time called purple, because we're not using the same filters. We're not using the same words. We're not using the same communication loops. So that to me was really obvious. And my last firm, and my firm was wonderful. They let me go in and say, hey, we're not quite aligned. Let's get aligned. But it's not that people aren't trying to understand each other. And I think that's where we get it wrong too, as business owners and leaders and as employees. It's not intentional to get it wrong. Nobody goes to work and says, I want to do a bad job or make people upset with me today. It's quite the opposite, right? So leaving at the end of the day feeling like you made people upset, feeling like you didn't do a good job is counterintuitive to why we all do what we do.
Yeah. Oh, I had a fascinating conversation with a business leader once where he was just so frustrated because people weren't doing what he said. And what I asked was, well, do they know they're not doing it? Because the vibe I'm getting is they think they're doing what you want. And I know in talking to you that they're not.
And I say that to business owners a lot too. It's like if they could, they would, right? So they're doing what they think you want them to do. And when you continue to show up frustrated and use the same words, they just run harder and create a bigger rivet in the ground, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's all, we're humans, right? That's the messiness, communication, right? Feelings, the heart that nobody wants to talk about.
Mhm. And it's the biggest part of everything we do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the biggest part.
Yeah.
So with that, what would you say is the biggest misconception you run into that people have about exit strategies, about this kind of future planning?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was actually talking with a team yesterday about this, and I think, there's a lot of negative connotation around it, and we get it a lot too. Like, we'll come into firms a year or two in advance. We'll do assessments and strategic planning and help them align. And more often than not, we have business owners say, okay, can you send your invoice to my personal email? I don't want them to see exit, right? Or I don't want them to see exit on your signature line. And when I first came to the firm, I actually challenged us, like, should we stay exit consulting group? But it's who we are. And I don't think we should hide who we are. I think it's about educating and saying every business will have an exit. You can die at your desk, you can liquidate, you can BK, you can sell as a unicorn, right? There's all the options. So us thinking it's negative is us actually feeling like we're immortal. And so having that open dialogue around one, it doesn't mean you have to tell everybody when you might be walking through a transaction. You might want to tell everybody you are. There's no right or wrong, but it's taking away that heavy negative burden around succession and exit planning and just making it part of what comes next. And not just what comes next for the business owner, what comes next for the employees, because those employees still want a company to go work at when the business owner retires. Those vendors still want a customer to serve. Those customers still want a vendor to serve them. And so there's lots of people that matter in the succession planning. It's not just about the business owner exiting. And so if we can keep busting the myth of the negativity around exit planning and succession planning and making it part of the roadmap, part of the journey of life, that would be a win.
I mean, I think of exit planning, I don't know, in the context of what I do in HR consulting, I see a business owner with an exit plan as someone I want to work with because that's someone who is not just whirled about in the now, but someone who really wants a successful business for however long that is a natural cycle for them, like in whatever their goal is, because without that kind of goal, it's very hard to say what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I think employees knowing or teams knowing or the market knowing, particularly if you're very ingrained in lots hundreds of people's lives, that there's a plan for when you're not there is confidence, right? And for some reason we've flipped that or and made it scary. And so I think that there's a real opportunity there. There's a new buzzword going on in business. I don't know if you've heard it yet or not. They're starting to pull it into professional MBAs and MBA programs, and it's kind of on the coast right now. It's making its way inland, but it's called ETA, and it means entrepreneurship through acquisition, and it's amazing because historically, just kind of intuitively, the marketplace has understood entrepreneurs to be founders, to be the creators, the innovators, the new widget maker, right? And all of that's true. But there's this whole sea of entrepreneurs, including this one right here, that buys companies, right? And that doesn't make you less of an entrepreneur because you acquired. It makes you a different type of entrepreneur. And historically, the traditional founder entrepreneur has had kind of a chip on their shoulder about the newer entrepreneurs coming in because they think that they don't have the grit or they think they don't have the understanding. And there's some truth to that. But the flip side is these newer business owners have a different kind of grit and a different kind of understanding because they might not have started this company at 18 or 19 or 20 years old, but they put themselves through education. They got a different type of toolkit. They took out student loans they had to pay off. They've leveraged their home and their life in a different way to buy a company. And so it's balancing that and understanding that it's not one or the other, right? It's the sway. And so often in life, we just swing the pendulum from one to the other. And I constantly say, it's the sway. You don't want to be flat footed. My Vistage chair said this to me about being flat footed, and it got me thinking, nobody wants to be flat footed because flat footed means you're stagnant, right? And I was like, no, it's about the sway. It's finding that balance, and you need both along the way. So I love that the marketplace is now open to what other entrepreneurial and ownership looks like because that is the way of the future given the number of privately held businesses that exist in the marketplace, given the fact that baby boomers are now aging out of their businesses. They're calling it the silver tsunami for a reason because there's lots of baby boomers who have lots of amazing businesses and the market still has demand for their product. We just need new owners and leaders to run those companies.
So, I mean, you've given this a ton of thought, both for yourself and for other companies, other leaders. So, Andrea, for yourself, how do you define success?
Whew, it's a big question. I knew you were going to ask it, and it's still a big question.
It is, but that's why I like to ask it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of I'll go back to the trifecta approach. In this role, in this point in my life, I would say number one, it's my partner's experience, the exit plan, succession plan that they sought out to by putting their chips in my basket. That whenever that point in time is for them, they look back and go, "That was a great decision. I'm having a great life. That was worth it. I'm so glad we did it." For all the reasons we talked about earlier. I think second is my employees feel the same way, that their journey at ECG is positive and they learn and they grow and they get stretched and they get challenged. But whether they're with us their whole career or a portion of their career, they look back and say, I'm so glad I was at that firm. I'm so glad I got to participate in what they were doing. I'm so glad I got to work with all of those amazing people around me. And I think for me personally, it's that my life reflects all of that just in how I show up. I'm a big believer in you reflect back on you what you project out. So if my life is reflecting back on, just getting a little choked up, but if my life is reflecting back my partners being satisfied, my team being satisfied, my clients being taken care of, our service providers feeling like they partnered with good people, that's the best gift you can get.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, Andrea, thank you again for joining me today. Oh, where should people find you online?
They can find us at exitconsultinggroup.com. They can look me up at LinkedIn, Andrea Steinbrenner at Exit Consulting Group, and we love to get to know you more.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll have Andrea's links in the show notes. And thank you all for listening. You can find Success is Weird and Messy wherever you get your podcasts. And it helps us so much if you follow, rate, and review. And if you like the show, tell a friend. We'll see you next week.